In delving through all the material I had to work with on our theme of memory this month, I was challenged this week as I prepped for the sermon to see if I could come up with my earliest memory. How far back I could remember that, what even as vague of an image as it could possibly be. So I sat in my chair for a good long time, and I think as far back as I could remember, my earliest memory is of a teddy bear I had as a very, very small child, which in my mind was bigger than I was. Like, I have this vivid picture in my head of being able to sit in this teddy bear's lap and just be enveloped by it. But I also remember not having that teddy bear, which was very confusing. I remember having a very worn, small kind of blue teddy with a music box built into it, which was definitely not large enough for me to sit in its lap. And then I remember as a kid, when I was old enough to read a bit and was going through the baby book that my parents kept for me, a listing of my first birthday presents, including a teddy bear named Louis, which was not my bear's name, and now we had a mystery to solve in the family, folks. Oh yeah, said my folks, you had a bear for a little while named Louis. It's up in the attic now. Why? Well, it got a little worn and fallen apart, and we never quite put it back together again, but here it is, and we went up into the attic, and they pulled out Louis for me, who was not in any way bigger than I was, big enough for me to sit in its lap, and it didn't register until a little bit later that I had grown, and it had not, as teddy bears are wont to do. And then this week, I wasn't sure if I actually remembered having the bear or not, or I remembered having the conversation about the bear with my parents, or I remembered seeing a picture of me as a baby with the bear being the size of the bear. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what my earliest memory is or not, if I actually remembered the bear or I manufactured a memory for myself out of this later storytelling and mystery solving with my family. And really, it doesn't matter all that much because it's a little illustration of what memory really is for most of us. It's narrative. It's storytelling. It's the story we are telling about ourselves as we are growing and becoming more whole as human beings. Memory is tied to the narratives that we tell about ourselves and our families. We are our stories. And just as every story that is written down or that we read, every story has a point of view. Every story has a vista from which we are standing on and telling it. And what this means is that our memories and the stories we tell get a little narrow and a little limited. Our point of view is a framework within which certain things fit and certain things do not. It's a means for organizing all of the information that is coming at us constantly that we are trying to make into memories and what we can put aside and what we will keep inside that box we are building for ourselves. The point of view is useful that way. It's a tool to help us to keep from going insane by the sheer rush of information we are processing every day. But it also means that it limits our view of our own lives. And sometimes it can encourage a little bias about the story we are telling about ourselves. Lord knows I want to be the hero of my own story most of the time, and I also know that is not the truth. So the story we are telling about ourselves, the memories we are gathering about ourselves and our connection to the people around us require that same level of intentionality in the delving that I was talking about last week when we were talking about remembering those who came before us, of going back and getting those stories of our ancestors, our recent family, and our extended family going back generation to generation to generation. It's not just about remembering others, but remembering our own story and our place in that web of connection. Sometimes we get lazy and we tell that story about ourselves by rote. It just becomes the words that come out of our mouths whenever we are prompted to tell an episode from our lives. Sometimes somebody has remembered it for us and we have taken on that memory into ourselves because somebody told us the story. Sometimes because of our point of view, we leave episodes out, we forget things. Sometimes we need to hear the story of ourselves from others. We need to build ourselves a new vantage point for a new point of view. We need to shift that view for ourselves. We need to stop telling the story by rote, take a step back and get that new view, retrieve what has been lost to tell a fuller story about ourselves. Snowing. I love that Tina shared with us the concept of Sankofa from the West African traditions this morning. The word literally meaning go back and get it, but the sense of it in the West African traditions meaning even more precisely, there is no shame in going back to retrieve what has been lost. It's okay if you don't remember the entirety of your story. I know I don't have the capacity for it, and yet there is no shame in stopping and turning to someone who you know or who you live with or who has raised you to say, I think there's a hole here. Can you help me fill this in? It happens all the time. I used to shame myself for forgetting things. If someone said, hey, remembered when that happened, and I say, oh my, no. And that was maybe important, but I don't remember that. It happened just last night, actually. We were sitting down to dinner with friends, and Jess asked me, do you remember that time that Nora sang that solo in that one play? And I'm like, I remember the play. I don't remember that moment. And I could have had a moment where I just banged my head on the table and told myself I was a terrible, terrible father for not remembering this special moment in my daughter's life. And no, I chose to just take that moment in and add it back into the story, even though I couldn't tell you what the song was. I do have that vague sense memory back implanted again. There is no shame in going back to retrieve what is lost. That is part of the story. And in the process, find out how our stories and our memories connect to the others who are connected to us. Which is why I shared with you earlier George Ella Lyon's poem, Where I'm From. I'm going to let you listen to it again, and I'm going to let you listen to it from her own voice. I apologize for the video quality.
Is it paint? Look at my Uncle Levi and Aunt Bessie's, and that's looks like Aunt Fanny and Cousin Fanny and a bunch of her children. This is the Mountain Laurel Festival, which was at Grandmother Joe in front of the Robbins held at the Great Ideals of Beauty and Marching Band. And my cousin Brenda and my cousin Barry. And I don't know who this is, but it looks like Sudie LaPlue, but Sudie's in the other side of the family.
This isn't
so
the
I don't
actual
know how
poem
she
yet,
this
so-
album, but you never can tell. I'm from clothespins, from Clorox and carbon tetrachloride. I am from the dirt under the back porch. Black, glistening, it tasted like beets. I am from the forsythia bush, the Dutch elm whose long gone limbs I remember as if they were my own. I'm from fudge and eyeglasses, from Imogene and Alifair. I'm from the know-it-alls and the pass-it-ons, from perk up and pipe down. I'm from He restoreth my soul. With a cotton ball lamb and 10 verses I can say myself. I'm from Artemis and Billy's branch. Fried corn and strong coffee. From the finger my grandfather lost to the auger, the eye my father shut to keep his sight. Under my bed was a dress box, spilling old pictures, a sift of lost faces to drift beneath my dreams. I am from those moments, snapped before I budded, leaf fall from the family tree.
In 2015 and 2016, George Ella Lyons was Poet Laureate of the state of Kentucky, her home state. And during that time, this poem that she wrote became a thing. I hadn't heard about it until the last couple of weeks as I was prepping this sermon, but it's huge and it's national. When she was Poet Laureate, the Arts Council of Kentucky began what they called the Where I'm From project. People were so inspired by her storytelling about herself, and because the poem she wrote was in response to another poet telling stories about where I'm from and where I'm rooted from, that she decided to let people respond to her own poem. And across Kentucky, children and adults were encouraged to write their own Where I'm From poems, write down their formative experiences and collect them in this sense of where I am from. And during 2015 and 2016, 731 poems from the citizens of Kentucky were compiled by the Arts Council of Kentucky onto this website. And then it went national. Julie Landsman, who was a literature teacher in Minnesota, got in touch with George Ella Lyon and said, this is really cool, and let's not just keep it to Kentucky. Why don't we do a national project? We can gather it together on a Facebook page and let people from all over write their Where I'm From poems. And hey, while we're at it, let's write some Where I'm Going To poems and what I'm singing about poems. The idea being that the more people who did this reflection, the more people who looked into where their various roots were coming from and wrote them down and shared it, more of the threads of commonality between people would be discovered as they were shared. This was an intentional experiment to counter some of the xenophobia and division just in the last few years we have been experiencing in this country. And last month, thousands of these poems were phoned in and mailed in to our legislators in our nation's capital as we approached this last election. I am concerned about the divisions in our country, and let me tell you why I am from. Can you imagine being a senator or a congressman and getting these poems left on your voicemail? Would you listen to them all? Probably not. Some of the advice given was pick some of the choice lines because you're probably going to get hung up on before you get through the whole thing. But tell your stories. Let's show our leaders who are breeding such hatred right now that we are a beautiful and diverse and yet connected people. Let's tell our stories where we are from. Intentionality. I use that word a lot, and then I let you go and take it home. But I thought today we could actually try to put this into practice, which explains all the paper in your chairs this morning. I've already heard I hate homework this morning. Tough. You get to share some of my work today. I don't want us to write a whole poem this morning. That is for later. That could be an all day or all week or all month project. But the idea today is to get to that first sentence, that first I am from, what you might think is the opening line of your roots story. George Ella Lyon, in setting up the Where I'm From project, has handed out some prompts and some suggestions about how to get started. Get to 3 to 5 formative experiences in your life. Start there. It could be a place, could open up a piece of descriptive writing, a scene from your memory. Your parents' work, she says, could open into a memory of going with them, helping, being in the way. An important event could open into free writing all the memories of that experience, then writing it down as a scene. Food could open up into a scene at the table. Music could take you to a scene where music is playing or you are singing. Wise words, something that someone has said to you, could open into a scene where you had that conversation, or there could be some significant object that you could write about the sense memories of, the touch and the taste and the smell of it. Begin there, get to 3 to 5, and then pick one that could be the sentence, I am from the. Give it a little bit of a descriptive spin, just one sentence. Don't tell the whole story, just tell the sense of it. We're going to take some time to do that, and we're going to do that in the quiet, because quiet is good for us. And then maybe I might share a few of my own with you as I've worked on this week. And then if you're brave and you're moved to, we might share a few into the crowd here from you all, and then talk about what the next steps are. But yeah, I didn't feel like writing a whole sermon today, so you get to write parts of it today and share it with one another. Would any of you all in the library like some of these papers I've handed out? We got them? All right, people are on it. Excellent. the studious sound of pencils scribbling. Here's a few that I came up with this week. I am from the bend of my grandmother's elbow as it rolled out the doughs for family feasts. I am from we'll love you no matter what, and every test I put that promise to. That's kind of where we're going. And not to rush anyone, but how are we doing? How's this experiment feeling? Should I never do it again? Is anyone feeling brave enough to try sharing one? Ooh, hey. Just one sentence, yeah.
Okay. I am from the sun-warmed concrete on bare feet. I am from the palm trees and the succulents. I am from Saturdays on the beach and endless car trips.
I am from splashing in the pond puddle made by the frozen culvert in the spring.
I am from the vacuum.
I am from a small step for man, a giant leap for mankind.
I am from challah and Brussels sprouts, from the world's fastest typist and the World War I nurse. I am from a lidded box in the big closet.
I am from Noche Buena and Thanksgiving reunions, from Ada and Emilio, from roots in Las Palmas and Galicia, and de colores.
I am from a smile, everything is fine, and you are beautiful. I'm from Ada, Oklahoma.
I'm from the smell of home-baked bread filling the home after returning from playing neighborhood games.
I am from my home.
I am from shish kebab and pilaf, and if your grandmother had wheels, she'd be a bus.
I am from Shakespeare and Wilde, Stoppard and Wilson, placing words in my mouth and new horizons in my eyes. I am from long conversations on a living room couch and the decision to stop running in place. Thanks everybody for being brave enough to share. This is just the start to a poem, and I see some of you are already skipped on to the next step with the template on the very back of this whole thing. This is just one suggestion for how to form a poem together. You are not obviously bound to fill in the blanks and just present it the way it is in the paper. You can craft it however you want, but it's a format similar to the one that Georgiella put out. Take it home, don't take it home, but take some time to stop and think about your story and your roots and how far they go and how wide and how deep, and how it's not just your story, but your family's story and your friend's story. It's our story, really, connected in many and marvelous ways. This project was begun as a counter to the hate and division in our world by telling our stories and finding the ways that they connect and they intersect with one another. And we are at a point in our lives right now where our history and the story of all that came before us and the future we are building for ourselves right now demands from us a story of our whole humanity, told from a much wider point of view, told from new points of view, told from the forgotten points of view, for the ones we have ignored. It is up to us to embrace that spirit of Sankofa, to remember that there is no shame in going back to retrieve what has been lost. We must go back and retrieve all that we know we carry with us, and all that we know we must carry forward into what will come after. Thank you. It may be so.